The storyline for PlayStation 4's Spider-Man follows the aftermath of the arrest of Wilson Kingpin Fisk. Without his presence in the criminal world, powerful supervillains like Mr. Negative and Dr. Octopus rush to fill the power vacuum, and Spider-Man, outmatched and outnumbered, is the only one who can defend the city from the onslaught. Comic book superheroes have often been referred to as the mythological heroes of modern times. And as we'll see, the story of Spider-Man is bound by the same rules as those of ancient mythology. Let's break down the myth of Spider-Man. I'm Super Bowl Pants. I have a graduate degree in fiction and I'm a published author. I've been studying stories for the last 15 years. I started the Myth of series because we're in a renaissance of storytelling, and video games can present stories that are as elegant and entertaining as those in movies and myths. The hero's journey is a story structure theorized by Joseph Campbell. He studied thousands of ancient myths and discovered that these stories followed a pattern of 12 plot points. He hypothesized that this pattern emerged because all human beings share the same formative psychological moments, despite their difference in culture, era, and location. Today, the hero's journey has been adopted by screenwriters and authors as an aid to plot their stories, with notable examples from the Pixar and Marvel studios. Through the hero's journey, you can better understand the purpose of a story, and you can better understand your own story, learning how to adapt and grow to the challenges you're currently facing. So, let's get into the hero's journey. The story begins with the ordinary world, a time when the hero has yet to confront his internal and external problems. Spider-Man begins with Peter Parker in his small New York apartment. It's strewn with the memorabilia of his fights conducted over the last 8 years as Spider-Man. On the police scanner, he hears of a SWAT infiltration planned for Fisk Tower. He suits up, but before leaving out the apartment window, he receives a past due notice from his landlord. Spider-Man battles through Fisk Tower, and after great destruction, Fisk is arrested. Just before Fisk is driven away to the supervillain prison, the Raft, he warns that he's the one who has kept order in the city, foreshadowing the events to come. Spider-Man's internal conflict is illustrated as an imbalance of priorities between his life as Spider-Man and his life as Peter Parker. In this case, he must answer a call to defend the city instead of paying his past due rent. Spider-Man's external conflict is foreshadowed by Fisk, when he warns that Spider-Man has yet to encounter the worst the city has to offer. The call to adventure is a time when the hero must confront their own complacency. While it often involves a letter, phone call, or messenger, the call to adventure can also be an act of reconnaissance. Yuri calls Spider-Man to inform him that there have been a series of break-ins at Fisk properties since his arrest, and one is currently occurring at Fisk's estate auction. Here, Spider-Man encounters the demons for the first time as they attempt to steal something. However, Spider-Man defeats the demons and leaves with a ceremonial mask. Prior to this interaction, he thought New York would be safer after the defeat of Fisk. However, the demons are a clear indication that a new enemy is on the scene, and it's a direct result of Fisk's arrest. The introduction of a new villain has shaken his belief that enemies can simply be defeated to secure the safety of the city, and he begins to realize he is no longer within the ordinary world. The refusal of the call is a time when the hero will hesitate or even refuse the call to adventure, at least temporarily. However, Peter Parker has already accepted his role as Spider-Man, the superhero. For this reason, an explicit refusal of the call to adventure isn't possible. Spider-Man knows he's responsible for the safety of the city, and he could not refuse to defend it. However, there is a symbolic refusal when Parker presents one of the demon masks to Martin Lee, and Martin Lee advises Parker to discontinue the investigation because he's dealing with dangerous people. Immediately following this discussion with Lee, Parker calls MJ to deliver this warning, and MJ mentions that it's strange that Lee would have this knowledge. She even pushes Parker by saying, "Do you think he knows more than he's letting on?" Parker deflects this question, symbolically rejecting the call. Instead, he wants to preserve the ordinary world where Martin Li is a close ally and the enemies of the city have been defeated. The mentor is meant to protect, guide, teach, test, train, and provide gifts to the hero to help them continue the adventure. Parker works at the bioengineering lab of Dr. Otto Octavius, where they are attempting to develop prosthetic limbs. Dr. Octavius clearly serves as an academic and professional mentor to Peter. However, Dr. Octavius discovers Peter repairing and improving the Spider-Man suit in the laboratory one day. The doc offers his approval as well as a prototype for a new suit. In this way, their connection deepens and Dr. Otto proves himself to be a worthy mentor for now. As Vogler says, the mentor can turn into a villain and betray the hero later in the adventure. When the hero crosses the first threshold, he commits wholeheartedly to the adventure, no longer looking back. The demons perform a dangerous act of terrorism during Osborn's political rally honoring the police officer and Miles Morales' dad, Jefferson Davis. A suicide bomber detonates a bomb that kills Davis, and Martin Li takes the stage as Mr. Negative, revealing himself as an enemy and no longer an ally. After Davis dies, Spider-Man must investigate and punish those responsible. After crossing the first threshold into the special world, the hero encounters tests, allies, and enemies. In Spider-Man, a few of the tests encountered are the misidentification of allies and enemies. Martin Li is initially identified as an ally, which is a failed test, and Silver Sable is initially identified as an enemy. These failed tests indicate that Spider-Man's current perceptions are unreliable. Allies. Aunt May works at the homeless shelter Feast. She serves as a source of moral support, and she helps ground Peter's identity outside that of Spider-Man. In a sense, she's a reminder for why Spider-Man does what he does. Mary Jane is an ally who helps uncover the secret criminal forces currently at play. Her investigative journalism turns up information and clues that help Spider-Man throughout his adventure. Miles Morales, the son of Jefferson Davis, is an ally of Spider-Man who helps protect Peter's family and friends while he's away. He also uncovers clues, helping Spider-Man along in his adventure. Enemies. Martin Li develops dangerous powers and an alter ego named Mr. Negative as a result of Oscorp testing the Devil's Breath serum. His alter ego uses these powers to control the minds of others and create highly destructive negative energy. Li seeks vengeance on those who exposed him to the serum at a young age, and he wants to unleash this serum on the citizens of New York. Shocker, Vulture, Electro, and others are worth mentioning, but they have very little personal stake in the adventure. Instead, they simply serve as overpowered henchmen for the soon-to-appear Dr. Octopus. Osborn is a complicated enemy. He medically tested children like Martin Li, giving Spider-Man's enemies mutagenic powers, and he directly opposes Spider-Man's mentor by defunding his prosthetic developments. However, Osborn was motivated to develop the GR27 or Devil's Breath serum to save his ailing wife, and he does develop the anti-serum. While he isn't a direct enemy, he does enable those who seek to prevent Spider-Man's success. Dr. Octopus is the greatest villain of this tale, and he has yet to reveal himself. Driven to accept militaristic funding after losing Osborn's financial support and receiving a diagnosis of a degenerative neurological disorder caused by lab chemicals, the Doctor develops his octopus suit. However, the Neuralink for the suit amplifies his aggression, and he is maddened into the supervillain, Dr. Octopus. During the approach to the Inmost cave, the adventure begins to intensify and the stakes are increased. The hero encounters additional Threshold Guardians as they enter a new world, one even more dangerous than before. Mr. Negative manages to secure a sample of the Devil's Breath. However, Spider-Man battles for control and defeats Mr. Negative. He is arrested and the Devil's Breath is secured by police. However, while in transit, Devil's Breath is recaptured by unknown forces just as all the supervillains within the raft are unleashed on the city. Spider-Man battles these supervillains simultaneously, but he is outnumbered and overpowered. He's defeated just after learning that his mentor has become Dr. Octopus. During the approach to the Inmost cave, the hero will sometimes enter one or more new special worlds. Spider-Man is pitched into a new special world upon suffering 1. The emotional loss of his mentor, 2. A crushing physical defeat, and 3. The deployment of the deadly devil's breath on the city. This new world is a place where the villains have all the power and the innocent are no longer safe. To escape from this new special world, Spider-Man must defeat the escaped supervillains who serve as Threshold Guardians. Vulture, Electro, Rhino, Scorpion, Mr. Negative. Spider-Man defeats each of these supervillains in fantastical battles. He conquers Mr. Negative last, however, he's unable to prevent Dr. Octopus from escaping with Osborn and the Anti-Serum, which is able to reverse the effects of the Devil's Breath. The Ordeal is a time when the hero must face down death. Oftentimes he or she must confront the Shadow, which is a psychological archetype theorized by Carl Jung, which represents the unconscious or qualities of the hero that have been rejected. Dr. Octopus isn't revealed as a shadow of Spider-Man's until he stops his selfless development of prosthetics and instead selfishly develops an exoskeleton for himself. For our hero, this selfish corruption of Doc's talents is antithetical to what Spider-Man believes in. Spider-Man battles Dr. Octopus, the most powerful and intelligent supervillain he's faced yet. In this way, death seems almost certain, and the stakes have never been greater. Furthermore, the conflict is heightened by the emotional baggage of having to battle his mentor and the fact that all the lives in the city are at stake. After defeating the antagonist, the hero seizes his reward. Spider-Man defeats Dr. Octopus and takes possession of the Anti-Serum, which will be used to save the citizens of New York who have been infected with Devil's Breath. Additionally, heroes that survive death during the ordeal are granted a new and improved perspective. For Spider-Man, he learns that indulging selfishness can lead to absolute corruption, as it did with Dr. Octopus. During the road back, Spider-Man is forced to choose between giving the Anti-Serum immediately to Aunt May to save her life, or relinquish the Anti-Serum for the mass production of a cure for Devil's Breath. Having confronted and rejected selfishness as presented in Dr. Octopus, Spider-Man relinquishes the Anti-Serum. Joseph Campbell mentions this moment of the hero's journey often has a magical flight aspect, signifying the quote, leaving behind of something important or significant, a great sacrifice. In this way, Spider-Man leaves behind Aunt May, making the greatest sacrifice he has yet. The resurrection is a time for the last and most dangerous meeting with death. For the self-sacrificing Peter Parker, his own death is not the most dangerous. Instead, it's the death of a loved one. The resurrection is a time when the hero is reborn with a new identity, sometimes through a final and difficult choice, which tests the hero's values. This is when Peter says goodbye to Aunt May to save the citizens of New York. He's choosing to let go of part of Peter Parker to become Spider-Man. His role as a superhero and protector supersedes his role as a son. The return with the Elixir often ends with the hero at the starting point of his journey. Spider-Man's journey began with an eviction notice, and it ends with him getting a new apartment. He has repaired his relationship with MJ, and he is rooming with Miles while his new place is being prepared. The hero's journey often includes one final surprise that prefaces a new adventure, and here, the surprise is that Miles has developed his own spider powers. So that's the myth of Spider-Man. Come join me, Super Bowl Pants, on Twitch for live playthroughs. If you have questions or requests, post them in the comments below. And for more of the Myth of series, look right here.